respected spiritual brothers and sisters. Firstly, thank you. The organizer gives me this opportunity, something like reunion. Many of your face very familiar in my mind. So long time friend. Actually, I myself, the follower of Indian tradition, as a matter of fact, student of Nalanda tradition. So, historically, you Indian were our guru, our teacher. We are Jala, student. So now, as some of speaker mentioned, today's world, everybody want happy life, and the happy life very much depend on peaceful life. So now, on the planet, I think we notice in 20th century, same century, one century, early part of 20th century and the later part of 20th century, there were big sort of change or differences. I always mentioning the European Union and till Second World War, many member states of European Union fighting, killing each other. Then eventually, after Second World War, people, I think, too much suffering through war. So then they, I think, through difficult period, we human being, then, you see, if something, no problem, then we take for granted our sort of daily life, go like that. When we passing through tremendous difficulties, then we open our mind. Why? How? So that's, I think, happened in European sort of continent there. Too much suffering, too much killing. So then they developed European Union. Obviously, if European Union not developed, then I think the last few decades, I think there must be some killing among member states. Since European Union started, at least among the member states, no longer fighting, killing. So I really admire. And one my friend, and as a matter of fact, I always consider almost my tutor about quantum physics, a German professor, von Weizsäcker. He once told me, when he was as a young German, and every German eye, French is their enemy. Similarly, in French eye, like that. When we discussed this in 1990s, then he told me, nowadays that kind of thinking completely changed. So therefore, same century, I think the desire for peace, harmony is much developed. But still now, world, every day when we listen news, killing. If one human being killed by one animal, like a tiger, like an elephant, it becomes news. Now human being killed by another human being. Now this is not news or something almost normal. So that's today's world. Too much of city violence. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when we put question, why? Firstly, basically, now according to scientists, basic human nature is more compassionate. Constant anger, constant hatred, actually eating our immune system. So more compassionate mind, very helpful to sustain our positive body element. And then I think everybody have the experience. The day when you receive some compassionate attitude from your neighbor, including from your family member, that day you feel very happy. The day when you have some kind of heated discussion with angry face, I think whole day, including dream some uncomfortable dream. That's our human nature. Mentally happy, food, shelter, secondary. Poor people, even beggar, full of love, each other, happy. And millionaire or billionaire, a lot of money, and provide on top of money, even sort of a lot of power. In the family, lack of affection, that person will not be a happy person. Very clear. So therefore, loving kindness is very important. Our life start and survive with mother's affection, mother's care. I often telling people, the first teacher of compassion to me, my mother. My mother, very, very kind mother, and we never saw our mother's angry face like that. So therefore, 7 billion human beings' life started that way. See, we lived, we survived in the atmosphere of loving kindness. That's the way. So daily life surrounded with full of love, compassion, you feel happy. And then again scientists, medical scientists, they say, immune system. So therefore, now basic human nature is compassionate. And according to our daily life, warm-heartedness is the key factor to bring inner peace and create peaceful atmosphere. Since we are social animal, we need friend. Friendship develop entirely on the basis of trust. Without trust, you cannot develop friendship, in order to develop trust. You show them your serious concern about their well-being, then trust comes. Then we social animal, whether there is creator or not, we are social animal. 7 billion human beings. Each human being's life depends on the rest of the community. Now today's the reality is whole 7 billion human beings is part of the human community, because modern economy and also with technology, everything in the related. And then on top of that, global warming now telling us 7 billion human beings should work together like that. So therefore, now the sense of community on the basis of love is, I think, very important as a social animal. Now the reality, a lot of problems which we are facing is essentially our own creation. Now how basic human nature is more compassionate, yet a lot of problems we created. Why? From birth, different emotions there. So then, I feel the existing so-called modern education is very much oriented about external values, material value. Not much talking about our inner value. I think in modern education developed in Western world, at that time the moral principle or this inner value is concerned, taken care by church or monastery or nunnery. Eventually, I think maybe around 200 years, these technology with the help of science gradually develop. So it's necessary to have separate education institution. Mainly, they carry the responsibility about the material thing. So perhaps at that time, maybe more balance. Then gradually on the planet, interest about religion, some way, little bit neglect. So therefore, now existing education institution itself now should carry the responsibility for both the material development and as well as internal sort of the development of positive emotion or health of inner world. So I am quite critical existing modern education system. Now modern education is the universal, now should include about teaching of moral principle, teaching about our inner world, mind, emotion, these things. So these days I'm just use the word, of course my English vocabulary very limited, but I usually used to say the hygiene of physical included in education. Now we should have hygiene of emotion should include, so that you should taking care about physical health, similarly taking care about mental health. The existing education oriented about material value. Whole generation come from that kind of education, then they create materialistic life, materialistic culture. So therefore, now the in materialistic sort of culture, I think, and materialistic life is quite relevant. Me. I should be first, as some kind of sense of competition. In some extent, they're relevant. So now that is the source of problem. Too much emphasis on me. So now look, Indian tradition, since the world now lacking education about inner world. Of course, I respect all religions, whether theistic religion, non-theistic religion, or whether except Atma or Anatma. I respect all. Intellectual level, you see, we can argue whether there is creator or not, whether there is Atma or not. But that is something different. But I respect all major religious tradition. However, the Judeo-Christian tradition and Islam, you see, they have sort of also the basic thing is faith towards Creator. So there is no tradition of training of our mind, only prayer, faith. Now in this country, India, I think over 3,000-4,000 years, you see different also the spiritual tradition develop. Then, like the Sangha philosophy, one part of Sangha philosophy, and Jain philosophy, and then Buddhist philosophy, you see, no beginning of life. So no concept of creator, rather self-creation. So now it becomes important, training oneself. So in this country, over 3,000-4,000 years, the concept of the shamatha meditation, single-pointed meditation. On that basis, with the help of that, vipassana, analytical meditation. Now, analytical meditation truly, I think, something like a weapon to tackle our destructive emotion. So therefore, Buddha himself, I consider, product of Indian tradition. Before Buddha come, already the concept of shamatha and vipassana already there. So the Indian tradition is the practice of Shila on the basis that including ahimsa, then practice of shamatha, also the channelize the strength of mind. Generally our mind much scattered, so the ability little bit weak. Then concentration, meditation, channelize all our energy of mind. Then use that more sort of, because of the more powerful of mind, then investigate. So I did this morning also. I mentioned Raja Ramana, Indian nuclear physicist. He told me quantum physics in the West is a new concept. They found something new. But in this country, 2,500 years ago, already developed. Because investigate. What is the nature? What's the ultimate substance of these things? So then we concluded nothing objectively exists. Then the observer Now modern physicists not yet develop, say the investigation, where is self, where is observer. In this country, I think 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000 years, investigate where is observer. So the concept of Atma and Anatma come. So these are result of investigate, not only external thing, but also where is I, where is self. Then further investigation, all the emotion, such as destructive emotions, such as anger, hatred, these, how it develop. That also is according to law of causality. Certain cause there, that develop certain causal result. So all these, like external things, cause and effect, like that. I think beginning of whole sort of the, cosmology, particle, we call space particle. And then gradually it forming sort of different sort of that's a different thing that creates energy, I think from space. Space particle, no beginning, no end, always there. That's the way external things form. So similarly, our mind, chit, no beginning, no end. So that's the way to begin our mind, like that. So in this country, I think few thousand years is already investigate these things. So now these things, now my personal experience, after I came to India as a refugee, then at that time, not much sort of thinking this line. Then in 73, I visited Europe. External material development and technology, really wonderful. Then we discuss or sit together, exchange. Then it's the same sort of experience. Too much worry, too much anxiety. So the material development fail to bring real inner peace. Then I realized, ancient Indian tradition, which mentioned how to tackle our emotion. Then I found, that is something relevant to today's world. Then similarly, 79, I visited then Soviet Union, and then same year I visited the United States. Then this is my impression. This country materially highly developed, but in a world not necessarily peaceful, happy, a lot of anxiety, like that. So then I realized the 1,000-year-old Indian tradition, how to tackle our mind, emotion. And then also this country, the concept of ahimsa. 1,000 years, this concept there. That now today's world really needed that. In order to carry ahimsa effectively, karuna must be there. Without karuna, you see, ahimsa just a lip service. So with karuna, respect others' right, sense of concern of their well-being, then automatically you will never harm them because you respect them. you deliberately take sense of care or sense of well-being of other there, then no possibility of harming them. So the key factor about ahimsa is karuna. So this country, that's a tradition of India. Then, according to that ahimsa, tolerance come. Then, in this country, the religious tolerance is really remarkable. World need these things. The old religion teach us the message of love. Inspired different philosophy, but the same message of love. However, you see, just a different name, conflict in the name of religion. Terrible. So that's today's world. So India's tradition or India's message of tolerance, message of ahimsa, and India's practice of religious harmony, very relevant to today's world. And then even non-believer, training our mind, sharpening our mind through study of logic. That's in this country. Since, you see, there is some creator, then logic not much useful. But Jain philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, one part of Sangha philosophy, no creator, so ourself as creator, so self-creation. Then training of our mind. Then in order to training our mind, faith alone not much effective. Reasoning is important. So logic in this country, and traditionally, I think both Buddhist tradition as well as non-Buddhist tradition, there are a lot of, I think, knowledge about a logical approach. If this is so, that must be. Then, and Buddhism in general, and particularly Nalanda tradition, very much emphasis on reason. Buddha himself used to express, "Oh, my follower, monks and scholars should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation." So some Nalanda masters such as Nagarjuna and Chandakirti, they even reject some Buddha's own teaching. If you accept this Buddha's teaching literally, it goes against reason. So we should take liberty to reject that. It's quite unique, isn't it? So the Pali tradition is a foundation of Buddha Dharma. Wonderful. Vinaya practice, these things are common. Pali tradition, Sanskrit tradition. Now Sanskrit tradition, unique thing about Sanskrit tradition is reasoning, not based on Buddha's quotation. So that logical approach, although mentioned in some religious, scripture, but we can apply that every field. But scientific way to search, investigation, they're similar. So sometimes I discover Buddha himself. I consider Buddha himself ancient one Indian scientist. Not emphasis on faith, but investigation. So therefore, we should consider these are the subject of academic subject. So only this country's tradition have the potential to serve or to help. No other tradition. Other tradition just a faith. Although I respect all these traditions, but from the viewpoint of a Nalanda tradition, Nalanda thinking, then just a faith is narrowing our mind. The practice of vipassana open our mind. Everywhere, look, why? We never say yes, no, never. Investigate why. In every field, that's very important. All our action should be realistic action. In order to carry realistic action, you should know the fuller about the reality. In order to know the reality, investigation from various aspects. The senses of organs, just one dimension. Sixth mind, chit, have the ability to look various aspects, various the 3 dimension, 4 dimension, 6 dimension, and then utilize our intelligence, investigate that way openly, unbiasedly, objectively. Then we can see the reality. With fuller knowledge about the reality, then our action, accordingly, our action become realistic. Too much emotion, want something positive, something good, but the method unrealistic. Just as a push, because of imposing your own desire. Then often method become unrealistic, then failure. No matter how good motivation, good goal, but method wrong. Iraq crisis. I know. Oh, then okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. See you again.
Yes.
The India's tradition, I think, really not only ancient tradition, but very relevant to today's world. India's tradition has to give us the possibility of utilize human intelligence fully. Therefore, now that also way of approach, that also secular basis, not based on religious faith. Whether you say believer or non-believer, you see, these are common. So now today's world, out of 7 billion, over around 1 billion non-believer. And then among the 6 billion believer, also you see different faith and difficult. So therefore, the India's tradition, secular way, respect all religion and also respect non-believer. That's very wise, very realistic. So now my main point is, since these are, you see the fact, 82-year-old person, now nearly 83-year-old person, a lot of sort of experience, you see, meeting with different people, including scientists, I realize ancient Indian knowledge is very relevant to today's world. Therefore, now in order to share, in order to make some contribution for better world, firstly, this knowledge must revival in within the country. While I admire and also carry the as a messenger of ancient Indian thought. The Indian, you yourself, too much busy copying Western civilization, Western materialistic life. And particularly those young Indian. So now please, older people, now question of question of few years time. So now these young people, now you should think more seriously and how to revival of these ancient Indian knowledge. In that respect, we as a chela, as a sort of reliable, trusted chela, who kept all this knowledge, now it is our sort of, responsible to help, to serve as much as we can regarding revival of ancient Indian knowledge. This is not a revival of Buddhism, just simply logic and the science of mind, emotion, and then logical approach. In that respect, recently I met the principal of Dharamsala College. I discuss, and we already sort of thinking some program. At least you see, because the certain program for teaching these, something like teachers training, like ancient Indian logic and psychology and science of mind and different philosophy, these things. So we already, now in that respect, we have, I think, around 10,000 monk students and I think few thousand nuns who spent more than 20 years study these ancient Indian sort of knowledge. These are sort of source to serve you, to help you. So that's my fourth commitment, revival of ancient Indian knowledge in modern India. Then you can serve the outside, outside world or general people. Now, in Western countries, showing interest about Karuna, about the inner peace, more and more people now showing, and including many scientists. So ancient Indian psychology and logical approach, these many educated Westerners also is showing interest. This is nothing to do with the propagating Buddhism. No, religion is individual business. Even remain non-believer, very good. But this knowledge is, as a human being, as a social animal, we need this knowledge. Then immediately, I think, effect reach in China. Traditionally, Chinese, many Chinese are Buddhist, traditionally. Even today, now China, Buddhist population, around 400 millions. Many of these Chinese Buddhists, many scholars now showing interest. Buddhism is a scientific religion, particularly Nalanda tradition. So some Chinese professors describing like that. So therefore, now, firstly, Buddha Dharma or Nalanda scholars, all are Indian, no single Tibetan, all are Indian. So, all this knowledge come from Nalanda is Indian tradition. The whole Buddhist world is actually follower of Indian tradition, one of the Indian tradition, like that. So, I think if here in India, this in secular education include hygiene of emotion and logical approach. Logic, these things, I think many Buddhist countries follow that, and including China. So then, look, I think on the planet, Buddhist population may be around 10 billion. 1 billion. So quite big number. This is not sense of competition, but these are traditionally follow of Buddha Dharma. So they should learn what's the real message of Buddha, message of Nalendra. It's a very scientific way, not just faith. Okay. So that I want to share with you. Now some questions now. Now firstly, you should know the value of, I think mainly vipassana, analytical meditation. That's important. Sometimes in the West also I noticed some people showing interest about meditation. The real the reality about that meditation is close eye and thoughtlessness.
Yes.
That is, I think, not proper because of the no help to sharpening our mind. Just to say, in the name of meditation, some kind of thoughtlessness remain like that. One my friend, one Ladakhi, one young Lama, wonderful. I know him. So he spent 3 years retreat. And after 3 years retreat, we met. He told me, 3 years sort of retreat, every day some meditation. And the intelligence become less. So there is something wrong. The meditation, what is the purpose of meditation is sharpening our mind, not making darkness of our mind. Okay. So that's the main purpose. Then as I mentioned earlier, meditation, strengthening ability of our mind to investigate. Okay. Should not consider as a part of puja and ritual. Of course, my daily practice, some ritual there, but my main sort of interest and main practice is analyze. That really, they transform my mind. The emotion, all negative emotion, destructive emotion, no sound basis, just emotion, and very much based on appearances. So analyze what's the reality. There's big differences, appearances and reality. All destructive emotion very much based on appearances. Now that some scientists also say that, like that. The destructive emotion, most of destructive emotion, very much based on mental exaggeration, like that. So the analytical meditation, very, very helpful. And then analytical meditation brings your conviction. Altruism is always, because of very helpful. Self-centered attitude, selfish, is always harmful. If we go this, Buddha said that, and then superficial. Go deeper, reasoning, and look whole world. Then you get the conviction. Altruism is the key factor for happy individual, happy family, happy community. Through that way, that's the only way to bring happy world, happy humanity. Through analytical meditation. Yes. Next question.
I started meditation 10 years back,
and started realizing the importance of meditation in my life. How it is important to balance our lives through meditation.
That's right.
When we are young, it's so easy to realize something which is the most important thing in our life, which is usually neglected most of the part of our life. So I really wish and I pray that gurus like you who are like who can transform the world, if we can introduce this spiritual education in our education systems right from the beginning, right from the first standard or maybe from the kindergarten.
That's the education about our mind or about our inner world. It should include the part of our curriculum, kindergarten level up to university level. We are working with some help. One American Emory University, they fully cooperate with us, some section of that university, now last I think 12 years. So we are now working how to educate through so-called modern education, you see, including these, the knowledge, the subject about our inner world, mind, and these things. So that's important. As I mentioned earlier, basic human nature is more compassionate. Now scientists say that. It's true. But once we join existing education field, then these, the basic human value then become more dormant. Then only sensorial level sort of experiences. That's materialistic. So that we already working. Thank you. Through education, not through prayer, not through ritual.
आप और हम मिलके क्या कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि जब आप धर्मशाला में आए थे तो पेड़ और पौधे ही थे, कंक्रीट कम थी, अब कंक्रीट के जंगल हैं। तो पर्यावरण को बचाने के लिए प्लीज़ आप संदेश दीजिए और हम और आप मिलके और पर्यावरण को बचाने में सहयोग कर सकते।
Yes, environment is very important. The whole world is our home. Taking care of the environment is something like taking care of one's own house. When you feel cold, furnitures burn, is wrong. Something like that. This world planet, blue planet, is the only our home. So we have not only right to utilize natural resources, but also we have the responsibility to take care about the world. So that also I think should be part of our education from childhood. We should also teach. Each of us have the responsibility to sort of think about the caring the environment. So these things, not just knowledge or subject, but the concept about sort of the ecology should be part of your life through education. I myself, when I first came to India, no idea of ecology. In Tibet, everything, although you see in central, in Lhasa area, not much forest. In ancient time, yes, forest. I think in 1950, 52, 53, some Chinese sort of because of the survey, survey. You see, one occasion they found one rock actually, because of the leaf on fossil. They then concluded, and several millions years ago, the Lhasa Valley sea, and in the hilly area, lot of tree. That's now scientifically. So according to Tibetan literature also, you see, mentioned that in ancient time, the Lhasa Valley sea, because of the lake like that. So in any way, when we were there, every water we can drink. Only I reached India, then also Europe, then I realized, some water you cannot drink because too much pollution. Then I asked some sort of scientist, ecologist. Then they explained me. Then I realized now we have the responsibility to look after our own planet, our own home. So this should be part of our life. Each day, you see, taking care about environment and water like that. That also through education. Okay. Then next question.
Namaskar, Lamaji. I take seminars and workshops with a lot of youth, and I find that our youth in India lack clarity about their own true potential and a purpose in life. And I believe that if we don't have that purpose, if our youth doesn't have that purpose, we are going to create a nation which will be purposeless and disorganized. So how can we, what methods we can use so that our youth can realize their true potential, bring that clarity, and live a life of absolute purpose and profoundness? So what are the tools which we can use?
Karsa. Ka. Riba. That's it. The first day, I think existing the education system here, British introduced. So for the moment, see, the millions of young Indians, they have to go that way. Eventually, I think we should think seriously how to introduce sort of the curriculum, how to introduce these ancient Indian knowledge in school sort of teaching like that. This is long run. Now, like you, already now completed the modern education, still, you see, you are Indian, and as I mentioned earlier, the existing modern education is inadequate, because not adequate. No guarantee to bring full human being. So now this, we already, as I mentioned earlier, the including the college here, the government college, we already now discuss now how to start at the beginning some kind of teachers training. Then in Delhi also, it's some university now showing interest. So we are going to sort of discuss. Firstly, is to make some kind of draft curriculum and discuss. The beginning of this year, I participated one chancellor's meeting in Sarnath. About 150 vice chancellor of national level. So there also I mentioned. Then you see people, those vice chancellor, really showing interest. Now they're also doing something. So now next, I think 1 or 2 years, I think now concrete plan. And then, like you, some sort of that some workshops. I think there will be some sort of workshop, 50, 60 young sort of the student or sort of younger generation who have interest in these lines now should discuss. Everybody now knows this is something lacking. Now how to change, right? No better.
Make up for.
How to
make up for that what we lack.
So very good to see Indian youth now really thinking more open mind. That's very good. That's very good. Next question?
Yes, last question, sir. With the message from your end of Karuna, compassion, love, to have feelings of inner side which get manifested, do you expect that with this message of love, Karuna, compassion, the people, the government in China will have a change in their mind to see the Tibetan movement led by you since 1959 will reach its logical conclusion and Tibet will be free someday?
The political change, that's difficult to say. But in now China, historically, as I mentioned earlier, a follower of Nalanda tradition. Now many Chinese university scholars now describing Tibetan Buddhism is very authentic Nalanda tradition. And some Chinese scholars, some university, they interest about Tibetan Buddhism so much, so they also want to study Tibetan language. So as I mentioned earlier, in China, now Buddhist population around 400 millions. Now many of these Chinese Buddhists, now they are following Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So this is a long run. Of course, those Chinese who really appreciate Tibetan Buddhist knowledge or tradition, then automatically very sympathetic towards Tibetan problem. So we'll see the China, not democratic country, but a totalitarian system. So we'll see. Because how much change? Difficult to predict. Okay.